I lead a team of enterprise CSMs on the Domo side. We deal with customers ranging in size, and my peer Nick, who is much smarter and much handsomer than I pulled him in to join me for this session as well. He's got a lot of really good experience that I think is definitely beneficial and can be leveraged for this conversation. So Nick, I'll turn over to you to introduce yourself.
Great, thanks, Casey. Yeah, as Casey mentioned, both Casey and I support teams over in our CSM group. I'm managing a team of our corporate customers. I've been at Domo for just about 4 years now, working in the enterprise space, and most recently running a team of our CSMs over here in the corporate side of things. And been really fun because it's a lot of newer customers come into this space, and we have an opportunity to work with them right out the gate and help them with their implementations and making sure that they're successful right out of the gate. I know that's the main thing that we wanted to touch on today is how do we create a successful implementation or project, and what are the things that we've learned as we worked with customers to, be successful and getting up to speed with Domo. So really excited to share some of our thoughts. Again, we're always learning, but we have some good insight based on some of the experiences that we've had.
Awesome. So I'm going to share the screen here, and as we're walking through this, one of the benefits we have is we get to see customers of all different sizes at Domo, and we work with the large and with the small. But really, in our experience, regardless of the customer size or the industry, there are principles that really are common threads for success across all customers, and really those principles begin with strategy. What is the strategy behind what we're going to do with this customer? As a CSM group, we pick up the customer once the sales cycle has run through, and sometimes we're involved even before. But the benefit of us getting involved right away is we can really align to the strategy and the purchase decision behind bringing a tool like Domo into their organization. And so from the enterprise and from customers of all different sizes, we've learned that the things that matter most at the beginning really start with aligning with the customer. And so Nick will walk through first what those key roles are that help us succeed from customers small or big. What do we need on the customer side? Who's driving the vision? Who's driving the strategy? Who knows the data that can get us there? Then it's how do we think about use cases and how do we measure that success? And we'll show a few items on the Domo side, like using our instance of Domo. We'll show you how we audit cards and how we structure pages and the production pages that drive our business forward. And we'll jump into some of the pillars of success. What are the things that are absolute truths that we would hope to consult to and help customers build the foundation of their strategy? And then as you scale and as the company size grows, what are the things to consider from a COE perspective, the center of excellence? What is your governance strategy and how should you be thinking about it? And then how quickly should we begin with the timeline of education and certification and those things? And so Nick, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Casey. So yeah, as Casey mentioned, we've got a unique experience working with customers of different sizes. And one thing that we do on our team is we have an onboarding specialist who kind of helps level set with our new customers and making sure that they understand, why they purchased Domo. We talk through kind of the core items that we need in place to be able to be successful as we implement the customers. And then, Casey talked about the expansion and ensuring that, the value continues to be driven after that initial project or implementation. So starting on this slide, this may sound very basic, but it is a reoccurring theme of people who struggle when they come on to Domo are the folks that don't have this clearly identified. And that's the key roles and responsibilities for the Domo team at the customer. And those three key roles that we try to identify as very early as possible is the executive sponsor, the major Domo, and the technical specialist. For those of you who are unfamiliar with those terms, our executive sponsor is somebody who's kind of our executive leader or our sponsor who's able to help drive the Domo message or the vision of what we're trying to do with Domo at the company to that person's peers or above, right? And helping the business understand why Domo was a good investment and what we're trying to solve. Having that sponsor is crucial because if there's additional resources needed or additional access to information or things like that, that person is typically the one that will help us get that access to be able to, you know, uncover those things that are needed. Moving on to the major Domo, that's one of our favorite terms here at Domo. Is just that key person who's driving Domo for the customer. The person that's a large task, right? And we've seen a lot of really cool stories where those major Domos, it's a lot of work initially to be that person coordinating the efforts and driving Domo inside the organization. But those people, once they get the hang of things and things start running, you know, they become very popular very quick at those organizations. People see what that person's doing and they want a piece of it too. And they want to figure out, how do I do what you're doing for my organization and things like that. But we work the most closely with the major Domo. And that person is almost like the quarterback. You could envision that person as internally at the customer to help us understand the lay of the land, you know, what's the issues that we're trying to solve and things like that. So major Domo is probably one of the most important roles from our perspective. And then again, the technical specialist. And sometimes we'll see the major Domo and technical specialist be one and the same, just depending on the structure at the organization. But if not, having that technical specialist is key, because as we start building out content, really just needing to understand where that data is coming from, getting access to the data efficiently, it makes a huge difference in our ability to progress quickly. So again, it may sound very basic, identifying those roles, but you would be very surprised at how much of a struggle that can be sometimes. But the most successful implementations and projects we see are where these three key roles are clearly defined right out of the gate. We could jump to the next slide, Casey.
Thanks, Nick. And one thing I would add to what Nick has said is, as quickly as possible, you know, we're looking at, like, we're working with customers of all sizes, and so it's not realistic to you know, to have a major Domo, an executive sponsor, and a technical specialist within all accounts of all sizes. So sometimes some of our smaller accounts, that executive sponsor, the major Domo, and the technical specialist might be the same person. You know, when we're operating on scale basis. And so for that customer who is here, who maybe you are the executive sponsor, the major Domo, and the technical specialist inside of your business, one of the things we see really early is, as we're working to build momentum with use cases, when one is wearing many hats, sometimes it's hard to detach from the weeds of the technical to pull back and look at the broad picture of the strategy. And so if that's something that you're challenged with, our CSMs stand ready to help you in that regard. And sometimes we get buried in working so rigorously against, you know, a technical issue or a connection that just is not forming the data properly, or data is not flowing, or there's issues. And sometimes we just need to pull back and look at, what are we trying to accomplish here? And how does this impact where we're headed? And so if there is an opportunity to delegate or to delineate the roles and responsibilities that you carry, That would be, I think, one of the biggest things that I would advise a company to consider is how can I move some of this onto another resource so that I can continue to drive to the company objectives. When we talk about use cases and really defining out the use case that we're going to do and how we scale, we've mentioned that we start with strategy first, and this is a good example of how we think about what we're going to go and accomplish when we're framing up what is it that we're going to do, what's the business challenge, what's the strategy behind it, can we get to some sort of value statement, and then what's the impact on the business. And the reason why this is so key as we think about the projects that we're aligning around is there are one of the biggest challenges that once we get into a use case is scope creep. We start to bring on different elements, and once we connect the data and we start to get things flowing, it's very easy to start saying, okay, now let's get this, let's get that. And if we can just maintain focus and rate, rank, and prioritize as we structure it this way, it helps us to align to what's the highest value first to the organization. So we keep going back to that and putting it through this type of a lens of what's the use case, what's the challenge, what is the solution going to do for the business, the strategy behind it, and then what's the impact, and who's the main stakeholder that is really going to be driving this. And so as you think of the use cases that are coming in that you're consulting to or that your business is chasing after, consider it in this way. Can you monetize it? If you can monetize it, then can you rank those based on highest value to the organization based on that strategy? And then it's very easy for us to say, okay, let's circle the wagons and let's really align all the resources around the highest value first, and then we'll take and prioritize from there. But that is how we think of it, and that's how we help consult on our side to what we're doing out of the gate, and then what's coming up after that. Back to you, Nick.
Yeah, no, great call, Casey. I think as well as we kind of think through, identifying the roles and responsibilities, identifying that first use case and things start moving, then we start to think about, okay, is this project going well? Are we on track? Are people getting value from this? Are people adopting the tool and using it for their day-to-day? And there's a few different ways that we can think about how we measure success. And we do also have a couple tools that I'll talk a little bit about as well. But we obviously want to talk about, how do we measure that? And it's hard to understand for a lot of people when they get a project going, what is success for them? Is it, are people adopting the cards and dashboards that are being built? Is executive leadership taking a look at the content that's been built? Is it meaningful? Are we answering the right questions? But behind the scenes there, in order to make this all work, we need to make sure that, the content's there as well. And so Domo, a couple of years ago, built a couple of apps that have been really helpful for that purpose. And they're called the Domo Stats apps. And Casey, I could share, I have our demo environment pulled up.
Go ahead.
I can show real quick. Okay. You able to see that, Casey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I just have a couple of pages pulled up here that are coming out of our demo environment. But these are our Domo Stats apps. I actually want to start over here. We have the Domo Stats app for users, so we can get an understanding. These are all apps, again, that can be found in the App Store, and they're free. There's good documentation in the knowledge base of how to get these spun up in your instance. But this is the type of content that you can get from the Domo Stats apps. So this one is talking a little bit about our users, who's logging in, who are, down by department, We can look at the different filters on the right-hand side here with users, roles, departments, a lot of different ways to visualize the data here. And you can see there's a lot of content here. Some of that may or may not be relevant based on what you're after, but there's a lot of great information here to get an understanding of, timing of when people are logging into the instance. What are those trends looking like? Who are the people that are most engaged? Things like that. I will also jump over to our activity log. This helps you understand, what are people looking at? What are the most viewed cards? What are people most interested in? And this is signal for you all to understand, what are the things that are resonating with the business, or what things maybe we need to adjust because it's not answering the right business questions. You have a little bit of who are the people creating the content, but again, a lot of really good information here. Just scrolling down so you can get a little bit of an idea of what content's available in this app for activity. And then I will jump over to, there is also for data sets and data flows, and this has been really important, especially to make sure that the data is clean, that the data is functioning properly, that the cards are being powered properly, and that if there are key data sets that are not on schedule or running as expected, there's an obviously downstream impact, right, to the end users. If the content's not populating correctly or timely, then we know what kinds of issues that can create, right? And that starts to hinder our progress and adoption. So you can get a really good idea of the data sets and data flows, how they're performing, what we're connected to, but a lot of really good information in a pretty digestible format. So you can catch on to those signals pretty quickly.
Great.
So we'll stop sharing that. Yeah. Casey, you were going to say something there?
No. When you're done, when you're done with that one, I'll jump in. I was gonna share one of the best practices that we see is when we start down the use case. So going back to the marketing use case that we highlighted, and what we do at Domo is we will have the use case and the page or the story that's highlighting everything that we're building and what we're measuring for the organization. Behind that, one of the best practices that we recommend is to have an audit page. And what I mean by that is I'll share with you how we at Domo, on the CSM side, how we build and think about audit pages to help us govern what it is that we're doing and using the data to go and take action on whether it's outliers, whether it's just cleaning up things inside of Salesforce, if Salesforce is something that your sales team or that your CSM team leverages. This is a page that we use to help manage the opportunities that we are responsible for inside of Salesforce and tracking our business. This is an audit page. This allows us to see from an operational perspective where we need to go and take action. So we have accounts that need assigned a CSM. I can very quickly see that I can jump into this card and see, okay, I need to go take action on these accounts. And we've got it bucketed by region and by territory. We've got open Salesforce renewals. This tells me like how many of those are past due, how many of those do we need to go and take action on. And the idea here would be for all of these cards to show 0. In an ideal world, if all of these cards showed no data, I would have a lot of confidence in what this audit page is telling me. And so as you think about how to structure use cases and then the action being delivered on the backside from that data, audit pages are extremely helpful in helping to scale and also to empower the users to go and take quick action on the data that you're building. And so as a best practice, leveraging the governance data sets that Nick has shown, leveraging Domo Stats, creating audit pages off of that data is very, very helpful to manage the business appropriately. Let me jump back in here. We have just a few minutes left, and one thing that I want to highlight here um, is the pillars for success. This is where we see the foundation being built for your Domo program. First, obviously, with the strategy, defining success as a business. One of the things that your CSM should or will ask you is, how are you measuring success around Domo? How is it viewed? What are your goals? How does Domo help accomplish the overall company success? On the foundation side, it's so important for us to align with you, to train the team, to bring in education, to bring in certification, and to build that win story for your team. The business impact. Do we have a roadmap on what it is that we're going to, once we nail this use case down, what's next? And then are we documenting that and telling that story back to the business? From a data governance perspective, do we have a model that we've built in place? And maybe we don't, but we can help you to get there. Like I mentioned, implement the audit process. Let's help to drive that governance best practice. And I think that's where most breaks down for a lot of customers is Domo. The beauty of Domo is you can run quickly. You can bring in data, connect to data quickly. Our product team has done a fantastic job in building a product that is agile and that's quick. And but with that there's a risk, and that risk is things can get out of control pretty quickly. And so we want to help in that regard from a CSM perspective to scale that program appropriately. Adoption. Is there a rollout plan? What is your CSM will ask you what's the adoption look like, and how are you measuring adoption success? Do we have a rollout plan for these users? If not, let's create one, and then let's gather feedback from them regularly. We run an NPS survey twice a year, and it's great to see how NPS matches up with governance or with the Domo Stats data sets that you can pull into your instance. It gives the qualitative and quantitative feedback on how adoption's going inside of your instance. And we hope to leverage that to help tell that story appropriately and then tweak where we need to. And ultimately, we want to capture the good things that you're doing. We want to highlight those use cases. We want to share best practices and build this awesome Domo community that is participating in this event over this week to help everyone to be successful with Domo. And so as you continue to scale, as you continue to find what works for you, continue to evaluate what's appropriate for your business. Is it more a centralized center of excellence model where you're serving the business as a core, or do you embed power users and minor domos inside of each? Really scale the program appropriately based on those pillars for success. This is something that we continue to ask our customers to evaluate on what works best for the culture that their business is built on. I'll pause there, and if there are any questions, we'd love to answer those. Nick and I would.
Yeah, Casey and Nick, thank you so much. We had a quick question come in from Alexis that, well, maybe you have an answer for. It was whether or not there's going to be any reporting made available related to certification. I think the subtext being in governance and Domo Stats currently, there isn't a good way of reporting on dataset certification. Do you know if there's any movement being made in that direction?
I know that it's certification, like in certified content, is something that we continue to push hard. But it also, with that, I don't know what the roadmap looks like, knowing that it's something that we're really driving and forging out to build to be a robust thing. And so what that looks like, I don't know, to be quite honest. But if you haven't started to use or leverage certification in inside of your COE, we'd recommend starting there with cards, with pages, with that content, and then moving forward. And as we continue to build that out, more and more will become available in that effort. And so I don't know if Nihar or Ken could speak to that, what's on the roadmap there for certified content, but it's definitely something that we think highly of.
They just got here. I love it. Surprise. Yeah, Ken and Nihar, while you're, we'll give you a second to collect your thoughts. We'll ask another question, but Alexis was wondering if we have any plans to create data sets for certification that track certification either in cards or data sets, data flows. While you're getting settled, Jason asked a question, which was thinking about that center of excellence and this idea that it is often very beneficial to have a major domo or someone who's kind of driving projects, driving requirements. Do you have any strategies for bringing on new major domos, or if there's any sort of unclarity in the role, if you're somebody who's more on the technical side, how can you help bring clarity to those roles or inside your business?
Nick, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I could speak to that. I was actually just looking. So we do have some content that kind of defines what those roles are. And that's a good question, because it's something that we do run into, right? There's organizational changes, things happen, but we always try to look at, kind of the next man up, right? And I know that's easier said than done, but we do have some defined roles, some explanations around the different roles for everybody. And Jay, I don't know if that's something I could share with you, and we can get out to the group.
I think if there's a PDF or whatever, I'll email that out to everyone. Just pop it over to me. That's fine.
Yeah, I was scrambling to see if I could find a screenshot to share, but I can't find it right now. But I can definitely share it with you and get that out to the group, because that helps, right? Just to kind of share that out. And a lot of times people will create job descriptions based on some of that information as well. So that could be helpful.
Good point. Good point. Hey, Alexis, with your question about certification metadata, can you either put that in Slack? Yeah, just put that in Slack, and then we'll collect all of like the feature requests and whatnot in like one big old document that I can pop over to the product managers and folks who participate in the call.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And what I would say on that is Domo Stats is becoming more, and we're finding more ways to build that out and to get more insights into Domo from how Domo's being used.
Yeah.
So this feedback is great for the PMs. They're building that out.
Ken, I don't see Darren in yet. Can you? He just jumped on. Speak of the devil. Well, in the last question that we've got time for before we move on to the next session, Armand is wondering how robust the Domo Stats data sets are. And then he also is interested in the manner that the Salesforce specific audit cards were filtered. I do think those are two separate questions. So let's hold the Domo Stats question for a little bit later. But coming back to those Salesforce specific audit cards, I guess, Armand, one comment that I wanted to make is like, we build our dashboards assuming that the data is good. And furthermore, if we're going to go into advanced analytics like John and the team were discussing yesterday, if we want to do some sort of a data science use case, the data has to be good. So if we have exception rules like a CSM hasn't been assigned onto an account, right? That's the kind of rules that we need to be monitoring. And Domo has some really powerful and sophisticated tools for that. So that'll be like our alerts, or just building a card that, as they were showing, if it has stuff in there, that's a bad thing. Back when I was a TC at Domo, if I forgot to bill my time at the end of the month or at the end of the week, I'd get an email saying, Jay, you haven't built any hours last week. But I think those rules are often very customer specific, right? It's specific to your implementation, your data set, how you run your business. And that's actually one of the strong reasons to have a good bridge between the technical delivery team and the business analyst or the data analyst who kind of knows how the business operates. And that kind of speaks to, again, Casey and Nick's thoughts about having a strong Domo team. Okay, we're at the top of the hour. I spoke too long. Nick and Casey, are there any last thoughts you want to leave us with before we move on?
No, we just to really appreciate the time. And Jay, thank you for this and the opportunity. And again, if there's any questions that you have, I'll Nick and I would be happy to take one-offs and work with you directly where needed. And I'll put our information in the chat.